Hey Bears fans, Ryan Poles is your new general manager and the coaching search is heating up, and yes, he is running the search. Like this video if you trust him to hire the right coach. I know there's been negativity, in the past. Oh, how's it going to be different this time? Well, I think it could be different because the GM is in charge. Like the video. Let's get over 1,000 likes on today's show if you trust that Ryan Poles is going to hire the right coach. What's up, Chicago Bears fans? I'm your host, Harrison Graham. Today's show is presented by Manscaped. Get the best men's grooming products out there, and your balls are going to thank you, especially with the Lawnmower 4.0. You can get 20% off at manscaped.com, promo code BEARS20 of all their men's grooming products. Go support our sponsors and stay nicely groomed, especially downstairs, because that's where all the action happens at the end of the day. All right. Let's talk about this coaching search. Let's talk about Ryan Poles, and then we'll talk about some of these candidates here. It's Poles' show. That's what I want to emphasize first. Ryan Poles is in charge. He was hired as the GM. DaBearsBlog has reported, Jeff Hughes, who's been all over this, has said, Ryan Poles told George McCaskey, I'm hiring the coach, and George said, okay. That is what reportedly happened, and now Poles has started to interview these candidates. We saw Jim Caldwell get interviewed on Tuesday night. That interview is complete, and if some of you guys are still skeptical, like how do we know it's Poles' show? How can we trust that is the case? Well, when the Bears' own Twitter account tweets GM Ryan Poles has completed an interview with head coach candidate Jim Caldwell compared to all the other coach interviews saying we, as in the Chicago Bears, have completed an interview, that's a strong indication to me that Ryan Poles is running the show. Now, the Bears came up with their finalists in conjunction with Poles, by the way. He liked all these guys of Jim Caldwell, Matt Eberflus, and Dan Quinn, but Poles is interviewing them. And if he wants to add more names, he will. Caldwell is complete on Tuesday. I'll have more thoughts on him later. Matt Eberflus is in this morning. He's probably interviewing as we speak. And then Dan Quinn will be in this afternoon to do his interview. And it's possible that we hear who the head coach is by tonight or on Thursday. But if Poles goes through these three interviews, and I heard the Caldwell one went well and he's a legitimate candidate, that he could add more candidates, and I think that's possible. And honestly, if he goes through all three of them and doesn't feel like any of them are a slam dunk, he should add a couple of more candidates. We'll talk about a couple other guys as well as we progress into this show. But I just want to emphasize this. This is Ryan Poles' show. And the reason he had that leverage is he would have gotten the Vikings job, guys. The Vikings wanted him, and the Bears, George McCaskey went to the airport and said, you're our guy, and they didn't let him leave. And so kudos to George and this search team for getting their guy, but Ryan Poles is running the show now. Like, he is going to hire the next head coach, and that should give you guys a lot of optimism moving forward. Who will be the next Bears head coach? Pinned comment on today's video. Let us know down below. If you get hit with the YouTube ad break, just scroll on down, throw a name down in the comment section. Scroll back up. We'll have more Bears coaching rumors, candidates discussion to follow. I thought Dave Wanstead said something pretty interesting because a lot of you guys continue to ask me about Jim Harbaugh, and here was the quote. I would talk to Jim Harbaugh. I mean, he's the guys. Look at what he's done in the NFL. I don't know why it's quiet. And like Cap says, referring to Dave Kaplan of NBC Sports, Chicago, I hear a little bit with the Raiders. But why the Bears never really brought him in or zoomed him in or whatever they're doing, I have no idea. No idea. Jeff Hughes of DaBearsBlog says they were going to bring him in, but they caught wind, whether it was from Harbaugh's camp directly or somewhere else, that Jim Harbaugh wants the John Gruden deal. He wants $100 million, if not more, and they were not willing to do that. At least the entire search team of the 5 members, with McCaskey, Ted, Polian, Soup Campbell, and I can't remember that, Tanisha, I forget her last name, the 5th person there. They couldn't all agree on that. They were like, ownership at the end of the day was like, we're not doing the Gruden deal for Jim Harbaugh. And look, it's a lot of money, man. Like, to give Harbaugh 10 years and $100+ million, it's a lot. I personally, I don't care. Like, it's not my money, right? Like, Harbaugh's proven it doesn't affect your salary cap. It's not like the Bears can't afford it. But at the end of the day, I think the Bears said, look, Jim Harbaugh has never been at one stop for more than 6 or 7 years. I mean, he's a guy that leaves after 4 or 5 years. That's what he does. So I do not expect, unless something drastically changes in the next 24 hours from Harbaugh's side, that he's going to be a realistic candidate. I'll ask you guys, though, is Harbaugh worth $100+ million? Type Y for yes, type N for no. Again, to me, for me, money's not a factor. It's not my bank account that's being impacted. It's the McCaskies. So type Y for yes, type N for no. Is Jim Harbaugh worth $100+ million? Now, before we get into some of the real candidates, shout out to Manscaped for sponsoring today's show. Again, 20% off all their men's grooming products at manscaped.com. Promo code BEARS20. I'm a big fan of the Lawnmower 4.0. Use this thing every couple of weeks to keep nice and trimmed downstairs because, you take a month or two off, no shave November, up here it's fine, but down there it just gets a little too gnarly. It's uncomfortable, and what is comfortable is this razor because you've probably tried other ones in the past, like, I got razor burn, may have even cut myself. Not with the Lawnmower. It's a fantastic product. Advanced skincare technology on this blade as well. Adjustable blades if you want to leave, different amounts of hair downstairs as well. You can do that. Wireless charger. You can use this thing in the shower. It's waterproof. It's an awesome product. Get 20% off with promo code BEARS20 when you go to manscaped.com. That link, that promo code, you can find it in the comments and in the description of this video. Okay, so let's get to 5 coaching candidates. We know who the finalists are. Those will be in the top 3, and I will reveal the order in just a moment. But I do want to still mention Brian Daboll here at number 5. Now, a couple of things. Number 1, I think he's the big favorite to be the next Giants head coach because they hired GM Joe Schoen, who is the assistant GM in Buffalo. That relationship is in place, so that makes sense. But I still think if you're Ryan Poles and if your 3 finalists don't blow you away, then bring Daboll in for a second interview. What's the worst that can happen? You get more information and you don't think he's the top guy? I don't think that's a bad idea at all. I like Daboll. I think he should be considered, but if not, and if it's kind of well known that he's just going to get the Giants job, then okay, then you move on to other guys. Brian Flores, number 4. He's not a quote-unquote finalist at this point in time, but I heard the interview went pretty well, if not great. Early on, there obviously are some concerns on his exit in Miami, and Poles and Flores know each other. There's the Boston College connection between those two. There is a foundation in place, so that's something to consider as well. I think he's on the outside looking in. I think other jobs could bring in Brian Flores to be their head coach, but I do think if Poles wants to add to this finalist of candidates, Flores is probably the first guy he's going to call. That's why I have him at number 4. Once the Bears hire a head coach, we're going to go live here on Chicago Bears Now. So subscribe, turn on those notifications so you don't ever miss it. If you have those notifications on, you will get buzzed on your phone when we're going to go live and when we publish every single video. So hit that big red button, share that link below with a friend. Our Bears coverage doesn't slow down even after a coach is hired. YouTube.com/Bears Now, your home for off-season coverage. Top 3, I'm going to rank them based on what I believe is likely. And I'm going to put Matt Eberflus at number 3. Because the biggest question I have with Matt Eberflus compared to Dan Quinn and Jim Caldwell, and I will reveal that order in just a moment, is can Matt Eberflus sell Ryan Poles on an offensive vision? Can he sell him on a staff that he can put together? We know Dan Quinn's put a staff together. He's been a head coach. He's coached in several playoff games and has gone to a Super Bowl. Can Eberflus do the same? Does he have the connections to get a good OC for Justin Fields? If he could sell you on that, okay, he's a really good candidate. If not, I have questions. I've heard how great of a leader he is. I've seen articles. He's got the it factor. But if you can't sell Poles on offensive vision around Justin Fields, how can you really be the guy at this point in time? Who's the better candidate? Brian Flores, Matt Eberflus. I actually think Flores is probably a better candidate. Type ME for Matt Eberflus. Type BF for Brian Flores. Get your votes in down in the comments before we get to our top 2 candidates. At number 2, I'm going to go Jim Caldwell. I know yesterday, Schefter, Caldwell's already in the building. A lot of momentum towards a Caldwell-Poles pairing. I don't think Caldwell's the favorite, though. I think he's probably the second guy, and I think there's real thought in the building right now from Ryan Poles and that search team that helped put this list of candidates together that maybe you show a lot of interest in Caldwell, and then you bring him in as your OC because he's a good offensive mind. He can kind of be the head coach of the offense. And what I would like about this as well, I've said all along, if you hire a defensive head coach, the risk is your offensive coordinator could get poached if this offense takes off. Who's poaching Jim Caldwell at 68, 69, 70 years old in the next couple of years? I guess it could happen. I don't think it's super likely, though, versus a 32-year-old innovative offensive mind, say Mike Kafka or someone like that. I like the idea of Caldwell as offensive coordinator. I wouldn't hate it as head coach. I'd probably rather take him than Eberflus, to be honest. But if you get him as the OC, I think that's a really good move. And that brings us to Dan Quinn. I think Dan Quinn, out of these 5 guys, is probably the most qualified. He's been a head coach. Everywhere he's been as a defensive coordinator, his defenses have been elite. Guys, the Cowboys led the NFL in DVOA this year. That defense was a joke before he got there, and he turned it into an elite group. It's not far-fetched to say. I think Quinn's the favorite. I think the buzz is increasing around that. He's the last interview of the 3 finalists of Caldwell and Eberflus and Quinn. Again, Eberflus today, Caldwell last night, Quinn later today. If Quinn blows him away today, he could be the head coach tonight. I think it's possible. So I think from what I've heard, he has sold every organization he's interviewed with on staff and coaches that he could bring in. He's connected. He's well-liked around the league. And that helps when you're bringing in, linebacker coaches and wide receiver coaches and, coordinators and all this other stuff. I think he's going to be a good chance he's going to be the guy, and a lot of teams want him, and if the Bears get him, that speaks highly on Ryan Poles, and I think it speaks highly on what the Bears currently have in place, led by Justin Fields, and how the league views this situation. Obviously, with Dan Quinn, things did not end well in Atlanta. It's okay to acknowledge that, but there were good things too. He made a Super Bowl. As a wild card team in 2017, he went on the road and beat Sean McVay and the Rams before losing in the divisional round. This guy had success, and look, the way they lost that Super Bowl, that's a hard thing to recover from within that same franchise, and they still made the playoffs the next year. Yeah, the next couple of years they didn't. 2018, they had a ton of injuries. People forget that. Then obviously 2019, 2020, it fell off. They lost talent. The Super Bowl loss was lingering. It felt further and further away from that group with Matt Ryan making another run, and it just didn't end well. But I think he's learned from that mistake, or from some of those failures and not being able to close out that Super Bowl, and he's been a quality head coach, and he's universally liked in the league. Everything I read, players, coaches love him. If you watch the Cowboys game this year where he was the interim head coach, he stood by outside the locker room after they beat the Saints, high-fived every single player before they went to the locker room. That stuff matters, guys. That stuff really does matter, and I think he's going to be the guy in Chicago. What is your one-word reaction if Dan Quinn gets the job? Let me know down in the comments. I won't say like home run or grand slam, but I think it's a solid hire. You got a GM that has a clear vision, that was universally the top choice within this building, and you kept him away from one of your rivals in Minnesota. You got to trust that guy, and if he picks Dan Quinn, I think it's a really good move. We'll keep you guys up to date on this channel as these things go along. Also, Instagram. Probably do another IG Live soon once a coach is in place, so give me a follow at HGramNFL. It's at HGramNFL. Stay tuned, and like a wise man once said, buckle up because things are heating up.